Good morning and welcome to the first meeting of the Rules Committee of the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Pursuant to the notice of June 19th, this meeting of the Convention Rules Committee is hereby called to order. For those of you whom I have not met yet, my name is Leah Daughtry, and I serve as co-chair of this Rules Committee alongside my new best friend, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. I've worked at the DNC as Chief of Staff under Governor Howard Dean and Governor Terry McAuliffe. I was CEO of the National Convention in both 2008 and 2016, and I have served as a member of the DNC's Rules and Bylaws Committee, or RBC, since 2012. So I know just a little bit about the rules, and hopefully by the time this process is ended, you too will be a rules geek, or maybe you'll run screaming into the night, I don't know. As noted in our July 17th email, today's meeting we will discuss a framework for how the convention will operate and how a virtual voting element prior to convention would work. We do not intend to hold any votes today. At our next meeting, the committee will consider permanent rules for the convention agenda, the permanent officers, and any other matters proposed for this committee's consideration. Before we formally begin, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let me now pass the microphone to my co-chair, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz.
Well,
Governor?
Thank you, Bishop Daughtry. It is a privilege to serve alongside you. Your wisdom, your passion, your experience for this work will serve all of us in our country well. Good morning to everybody who's on here. The Bishop and I will have a few opening words before we walk through today's work and agenda. But before that, we're going to hear from our chairman, DNC Chair Jamie Harrison. And I just have to say, it was Chairman Harrison's leadership that led us through a historic midterm, and I will have to say, for me personally, helped in my reelection bid in 2022. He did that by teaching us that year-round organizing is the key to making sure it happens. And I think from the electoral victories that are historic, it was more than that. It was Chair Harrison's leadership that made our party reflect the diversity of our nation more accurately, affecting the whole electorate and giving people a seat at the table. So with that, it's my privilege to introduce to you DNC Chair Jamie Harrison.
Well, thank you so much, Governor. Thank you for your leadership. And yes, folks, it is cold in Minnesota in October. I had to put a hat on this big round head. But hello to each and every one of you. Thank you all for being here. I'm honored to speak with you all today, but I'm even more honored to be the chair of this great party. You know, the Rules Committee plays a critical role for our party and for our convention by adopting the permanent rules of the convention and the convention agenda. I want to thank Governor Tim Walz and Bishop Leah Daughtry for their leadership in guiding this process, but I want to thank them also for their friendship. As I'm sure you all have heard, there's been some talk about the Rules Committee, just a little bit, but I want to be crystal clear here. We are moving forward with the process that we set out in May. And in that process, we are ensuring that our Democratic nominees are on the ballot in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. No part of this process is rushed. The timeline for the virtual roll call process remains on schedule and unchanged from when the DNC made that decision back in May and voted to ratify it in mid-June. As Bishop Leah Daughtry and Governor Tim Walz said in their letter to you all, we will not let extremism in Ohio corrupt the democratic process. This election comes down to nothing less than saving our democracy from a man who has said that he wants to be a dictator on day one. So we certainly aren't going to tempt fate by inviting challenges to placing the Democratic ticket on the ballot throughout this country. And thanks to you, we will execute the most successful convention in our party's lifetime. Thanks to every single one of you, we will renominate President Biden and Vice President Harris and defeat Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. You're on this committee because you are Democrats who believe in our democracy and you believe in our nation. You believe in the electoral process and every voter having a voice in who represents them. After all, these are the values our founders fought for. These are the values America was built upon. These are the values that generations of Americans have fought to strengthen and protect. These are the values of the Democratic Party. So today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We will discuss a rules process that is critical for democracy and our country's future. My friends, we're all in this together, and I'm so glad that you're here today. Every voter in this country will have the equal opportunity to vote for our nominees because of you. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris will be reelected because of you. Because of you, we can look forward to nominating our president through a virtual roll call and celebrating with fanfare together in Chicago alongside all of our delegates who are supporting the Biden-Harris ticket. So before I give up the floor, I want to once again thank Bishop Leah Daughtry and Governor Tim Walz. Your dedication and commitment is admirable. Also, thank you to our wonderful Rules Committee and to all of our amazing staff for your hard work on this process. So thank you all again for being here and for your continued support of our Democratic Party. Now with that, I would like to turn this back to Governor Tim Walz.
Thank you, Chair Harrison. Thank you for your passion, your work ethic, your optimism. And yes, you were out here in the cold of Minnesota to make sure that we won a trifecta and improved lives. My fellow members, thank you. Thanks for believing in our country and thanks for doing this work. I want you to think about, and today we'll make sure that the clarity of what we're doing leads to that process of electing our president and making sure we continue on that path. So we're working today with this committee to establish a framework for our convention. Today, we will address why a virtual vote is needed, how exactly it will work, and how it will complement the in-person convention. And we need to ensure that our work is open and transparent. So here's what today's agenda will look like. My co-chair, Bishop Daughtry, will describe the nominating process that has led to today. Former White House counsel Dana Remus will walk us through the legal and the ballot considerations that shape our decision-making. DNC and convention officials will share with us what to expect with virtual voting, what to expect at the in-person convention. Bishop Daughtry will walk through key components for your consideration of the draft rules. Together, Bishop Daughtry and I will share with you what the committee can expect going forward and take time to address your questions. If you do have a question at any time, please submit it by sending it through the chat, Member Support 1 or Member Support 2, and we'll get them answered. We've already had a few submitted. We will take those, and then we'll continue on with the ones that you submit. Let me turn it now back to Bishop Daughtry to get us started.
Thank you, Governor. Before we dive into the substance of our meeting, we must establish that we have a quorum. In order to do so, we need each committee member to please open the Rules Committee meeting homepage on your browser and mark yes on the screen. If you're having trouble, please use your Signal group, or you can send a chat to Member Support 1 or Member Support 2. Rules Committee members will use this to register their presence. Again, go to the Rules Committee meeting homepage on your browser and mark yes on the screen. A quorum is constituted by a majority of the total votes present, members representing 91.75 votes. Our parliamentarian, Helen McFadden, will inform us of the status of the quorum when we're ready. Okay, our parliamentarian informs me that we do indeed have a quorum. So let's dive in. To start us off, we want to address some of the issues that you may have been hearing about and the legal landscape we are operating in. So let me introduce Dana Remus. You know, you can't go anywhere without a lawyer. And Dana is our lawyer for this rules process. She served as President Biden's first White House counsel and was general counsel for his successful 2020 campaign. Dana, take it away.
Thank you, Bishop Daughtry and Governor Walz, for inviting me to speak with the Rules Committee today. I'm going to briefly describe how our nomination process is the key to ensuring that the Democratic candidates for president and vice president are on the ballot in every state. I'm also going to address a few of the legal challenges that have been threatened by the Republicans and the Heritage Action against our candidates. Those challenges provide important context for how and why we are thinking about ballot access deadlines differently than we have in the past. So to take a step back, in every state and in the District of Columbia, the Democratic Party is, of course, considered a major party whose nominees, if nominated and certified by a specified time, are printed on the ballot. In many states, the required certifications must be filed in paper form with notarized signatures from the candidates themselves and from party officials. And while that may sound like minor technicalities, I can tell you from experience that the certification process requires time and coordination, and logistical hurdles inevitably arise along the way. So we really do need enough time to ensure that the filings are done correctly in advance of any deadline. That's how we ensure we're not leaving room for legal challenge. And the deadlines for these filings begin to run on August 20th, the first of which is the state of Washington, whose 12 electoral votes are, of course, key to our pathway to victory. Other large critical Democratic states follow in short order, including California on August 22nd and Virginia on August 23rd. And of course, in every state in the country, we will have tens of thousands, if not many millions of voters who are supporting the Democratic ticket. That includes Montana and Oklahoma, whose deadlines are on August 21st. We need to ensure that those voters are able to vote for the Democratic ticket on the ballot. Now, in past cycles, certain of these states accepted provisional certifications by the deadlines with the formal paperwork to follow following formal nomination. And certainly some states have indicated that they're still willing to do that today. But the problem is that unless a state law specifically states that a provisional certification is effective, and many state laws do not, we can and should expect a lawsuit from the Republican Party or from a conservative group challenging the certification. And unfortunately, at this moment in time, we have to assume that everything about the election process that Republicans and affiliated groups can challenge, they will challenge, no matter the strength of their arguments. We've already seen a wave of litigation this cycle, with the DNC involved in nearly 24 cases with the RNC and aligned groups. It's fresh, certainly in my memory, in 2020, when Donald Trump and the RNC filed nearly 70 post-election lawsuits challenging every aspect of the process. They've stated publicly their intent to bring even more litigation this time round, including where there's opportunity around ballot access. Litigation over whether our nominees should be on the ballot is at best a distraction and a delay. The cases have to be resolved before ballots can be printed, before mail ballots are sent out, and before early voting begins. That delay and distraction is something that we can't afford, and it's something that we have been working to avoid through this planning process. Certainly anyone who has run for office or who has advised candidates running for office knows that ballot access deadlines are not something to take risks with respect to. They're not risks that we as a party can or should take. Now, from ballot access deadlines generally that start running in the end of August, I want to come to the special case of Ohio, which has gotten a lot of attention and been the subject of discussion this week in particular. For several presidential cycles, Ohio had changed its ballot access deadline as a matter of course to accommodate conventions of both parties, Democratic and Republican. But they were not willing to do so this year. Until early June, Ohio was still adhering to its August 7th deadline. Then a concerted push from Governor DeWine and Ohio Democrats broke through and got a change in the law, delaying the deadline until early September. That is obviously a very good development, but there is a complication, which is this. Ohio law requires a 2/3 legislative majority for bills to take effect immediately. Otherwise, there's a 90-day waiting period. Given here that this did not pass pursuant to a 2/3 majority, the new deadline doesn't actually take effect until September 1st, which means that when we hit the August 7th deadline, that will still be the deadline in effect. If we don't file by that original deadline, we'll technically be out of compliance with Ohio law from August 7th until the end of the month, leaving the door open to a potential legal challenge. And that's a risk. How significant of a risk? Well, it's hard to say, and people certainly disagree and reasonably disagree, but it is a risk, and if we can avoid it, we should. 2.7 million Ohioans cast ballots for President Biden and Vice President Harris in 2020, and we shouldn't risk effectively disenfranchising them this cycle if we can avoid doing so. Our goal as a party, of course, is a Democratic ticket that will be elected and that will enact the party's platform. My goal as council is to ensure we address and avoid all unnecessary legal risk along the way. And that's why we need a virtual nominating process. It's why the wisest, most prudent course is to have that process conclude in time to allow us to file a certified nomination in Ohio by August 7th. So I hope that background as to why a virtual roll call is so important to guard against Republican litigation and the significance of the August 7th deadline is helpful. And with that, I will pass it back to Governor Walz.
Thank you, Dana. We appreciate that. I think we'll go now to the bishop to talk a little bit about background on how we ended up here, if someone who has the experience to tell us that. Bishop?
Sure thing. So let's talk a little bit about the background of the rules process and how we get to this point. The convention is actually the final step in the nominating process that was implemented beginning in September 2022, when the Democratic National Committee adopted the call to convention. The call to convention. The call was adopted in 2022, but the Democratic Party had actually begun work on developing the process almost the moment our historic and successful 2020 election concluded. This work includes people throughout the DNC, including its Rules and Bylaws Committee, which I have been a member of since 2012, and throughout each and every one of our 57 state parties. By this point in the process, the Democratic Party of every state, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the 4 territories, and Democrats abroad has established and completed a delegate selection process. As part of that process, which began in early 2024 and concluded in June, millions of Democrats have cast ballots. Every state party has chosen delegates allocated according to those votes. And every state delegation has chosen members of the convention's standing committees, including this Rules Committee. This process took many months. The first delegate to the DNC was elected in March. The last pledged delegate was certified to the party just days ago. Since the spring of 2023, the convention had been set for August 19th to the 22nd in Chicago. The timing is in line with past conventions of parties with incumbent presidents who, by tradition, go second. Democratic conventions in 1996, 2008, and 2012 were held during the same week or later. In the case of 2012, much later, in early September. Our historic 2008 convention, that was my convention, was held at the end of August, with the Republican convention following in September. Republicans similarly have held conventions during the third week of August or later in 1984, 1988, 1992, 2004, 2008, 2012, and 2020. In the past, as a matter of course, states have worked with the parties to ensure that this timing would cause no conflict with state election laws. But because Donald Trump and the Republican Party view elections as impediments rather than the foundation of our democracy, what was once routine in the world of elections no longer is. With that, I will turn over to Governor Walz, who's going to introduce our presenters, the next set of presenters. Governor?
Well, thank you, Bishop, for that clear description of the historical reasons how we ended up here, to Dana for why we run the convention, both virtual and in person. Grateful for that to set that tone. Now we're going to hear from the folks who are going to tell us how this is actually going to operate, what the convention will look like. DNC Secretary Jason Ray is going to be joining us to discuss the function of the Secretary's office in terms of delegate certification and balloting participation, and will provide an insight how the DNC executed successful virtual voting at our last convention. Following the Secretary, we'll hear from Andrew Benz, Senior Advisor to the Convention and former Convention COO, who will walk us through the technical, behind-the-scenes aspects of making sure a remote ballot functions. After Andrew, Convention Executive Director Alex Hornbrook will walk us through the in-person convention of what you can expect when you join us on August 19th to the 22nd for some great time and good Democratic politics in Chicago. With that, Secretary Ray, take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Governor, and it's great to be here today with the members of the Convention Rules Committee. I just want to start by just thanking all of you for your service to our party in this important role. I know that my office has been working closely with each of you through the certification process, and I'm thankful to everyone for being so engaged and responsive. As the Secretary of the Democratic National Committee since 2017, I'm honored to be here as we prepare for the 2024 Democratic National Convention. In addition to my responsibilities to certify and prepare the role of all 4,000 plus convention delegates, as DNC Secretary, I'm also responsible for executing the voting process that allows our delegates to conduct the important business of the party that they were elected to do. I really appreciate the invitation from co-chairs Bishop Daughtry and Governor Walz to speak today. I thought it'd be helpful to this committee to hear a bit about the process that we used in 2020 to vote. A process that not only met the extraordinary challenges posed by COVID-19, but also ensured that our party's business was conducted smoothly, securely, and inclusively. I know that following me, you'll hear from Andrew Benz, who served as the COO of the 2020 convention and was instrumental on the technical side of this. I'll leave the technical details to him, but I want to focus on the steps we took and the process and how the process actually worked for our convention delegates and our state parties. To adapt to the circumstances of 2020, we developed a remote electronic voting system. This system was meticulously designed to be secure, user-friendly, and reliable. Each delegate received an individualized ballot with unique identifiers via email, ensuring that every vote could be accurately tracked and verified. Now, we know that our delegates represent a diverse cross-section of our country, and that not everyone has the same access to technology or the internet. As such, to address any potential technical issues or technology challenges, alternate methods of voting were available to delegates. In 2020, Voting on convention business began on August 3rd and ended on August 15th, in advance of the start of the 2020 convention. During this period, each certified delegate was provided with clear instructions for completing and submitting their ballot electronically. After everyone completed their ballots, delegates submitted the completed ballots through secure email systems set up by our convention tech team. Now, accessibility is really important in this process, and so we also provided instructions to delegates on how they could use a screen reader for accessibility. Additionally, my office took on the responsibility, alongside staff in the convention, to host trainings for our state party staff on this voting process so state parties can ask questions that they may have, but also to help them be prepared if their delegates reach out to them with questions. In advance of the ballots being distributed to delegates, my office, along with the campaign, hosted multiple trainings for delegates. These trainings were very important to us. We also set up a delegate hotline where delegates could call in during the voting window to talk to a live person and get answers on their questions with how to submit their ballot. Now, I'm proud to say that the feedback from our delegates in 2020 was overwhelmingly positive. They appreciated the ease and security of the remote voting system. The process allowed them to fulfill their crucial role in placing our nominee on the ballot in every state. The successful implementation demonstrated our party's resilience and adaptability in the face of challenges. As we look forward to the 2024 Democratic National Convention, I'm confident as Secretary of the DNC that the lessons learned and the systems that we developed in 2020 have prepared my team well to execute the important voting that we need to do this convention. In my experience, the processes we developed in 2020 were robust, secure, and ran very smoothly for our delegates and our state parties. I'm proud of what we created to ensure we could conduct the important business we needed as a party. Again, thank you to co-chairs Bishop Daughtry and Governor Walz for the invitation to be here. And most importantly, thank you again to the Rules Committee for your time and commitment to ensuring a smooth and democratic process for our party. Now, I'm delighted to turn the call over to my friend and colleague, Andrew Benz.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning, all. As Jason mentioned, my name is Andrew Benz. I'm a senior advisor here at the convention. I've been a staff member on convention since 2004. And I've served alongside many of you over the cycles, including the good Bishop. One of the areas that I helped design and operate at the convention since 2008 is the convention voting, including the 2020 voting process at the last convention. Wanted to give you all a briefing on that process, what it looked like, and the successes of it. So in 2020, we needed our delegates to be able to vote on convention business from wherever they were. To do that, we devised a system that was accessible and flexible while still being secure and simple to operate and participate in. The convention and the Secretary's office created individual ballots with various security features that linked them with the individual delegates. Those were emailed to delegates at their known email addresses that they have already given to the Secretary's office within the Certify system, which is a system that certifies their information as delegates. The ballots were fillable PDFs that required delegates to simply check their selection for each vote. The delegate then emailed that ballot back to the delegation's secure inbox, and state parties and DNC and DNCC staff monitored those secure inboxes as ballots came in, verified the security features, and entered the votes into the ballot tracking system. When a ballot was entered, the system would generate an email to the delegate informing them that their ballot was received, entered, and would display their votes in an email to the delegate. If there are any concerns, the delegate was given a person to contact. For those delegates that were unable to complete the electronic ballot, we offered other options of casting their vote, including by phone, to one of our staff members who would verify their identity and accept their vote and record it. Of the 4,747 ballots that we sent out, 4,732 were returned. That's a 99.68% submission rate. That meant only 14 ballots of the 4,747 were not returned. 45 delegations reached 100% completion. And prior to that and during the process, we conducted over a dozen briefings and trainings for state parties, affiliated groups like the political departments and staff of the committees, and the delegates themselves. We understood that training staff and delegates was vital to the success of the program, and feel to this day it's one of the reasons that we had nearly a 99.7% return rate. So that was our very successful 2020 voting process, and I'd like to note that it wouldn't have been possible without the help and support of many of you all on this committee, along with the Secretary's office and the PAD's office. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to our convention executive director, Alex Hornbrook.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, co-chairs and members for having us today. So on behalf of our team and our incredible convention chair, Mignon Moore, wanted to just let you all know that we are really excited to welcome you to Chicago in 31 days. Today is July 19th. We will be here in Chicago on August 19th, and it's going to be an unbelievable week and a productive week for us. So we're going to share some materials for you, which I think someone is going to share on the screen here for me. But we have been out here in Chicago for over a year after a really thorough, rigorous process that Chair Harrison, Secretary Wray, a number of our other officers and leaders participated in. We selected and announced Chicago as our host city for the 2024 convention back in April of 2023. So we've been here for over a year preparing to welcome all of our delegates, as well as our additional guests and media coming to cover our activity. And I think, are we getting the material up on the screen? Hopefully. Okay, well, hopefully we're going to be getting here we go. Okay, perfect. So as we go click through here, thanks for your patience. Someone can advance us. We, view our week here in Chicago as a critically important opportunity to conduct not just the important party business that the Secretary and other folks have been talking and will continue to talk with you about throughout this process, but this is also a critical opportunity for us as a party and to get to tell our story directly to voters where they are. So we have been, working here in Chicago at the United Center to build both a literal and figurative stage for the president, the vice president, and everyone here to be able to communicate about the incredible record of accomplishment that our party, from our leadership in the White House on down to Democrats at the state and local level, have to brag about here, as well as the stakes of the upcoming election in November. And we know we have to do this in really new and interesting and creative ways. And so drawing upon, some of not only coming together as we have prior to 2020 in person, but also drawing on some of those really, strategic and innovative techniques that we pioneered out of necessity in 2020. So we're looking forward to this opportunity to really get in front of the voters on TV, sure, but also in a variety of other ways. And hopefully all of you have seen some of the interesting things that we've done so far here in Chicago, including launching the first of its kind creator program, where we are credentialing content creators in the similar way that we credential traditional media, because we know that a lot of voters, particularly young voters, are getting their information from much different sources in different ways than other folks have, or than folks have in the past in our fractured media environment. So it's a really big opportunity, not just for the top of the ticket, but for Democrats, across the party, to take advantage of this moment in August in Chicago to tell Americans, what we're all about. We can advance to the next slide, please. We are excited to be here in Chicago, which we'll see in a second on the next. There we go. It's an unbelievable host city, especially for an event of this size and this scope and this impact. We really find, this is one of the largest and most diverse, robust, vibrant cities in America, and is right here in the heart of the Midwest, which all of you are obviously well aware is a critical area for the president and our party. Powered victories in 2020. It powered a lot of the victories that people were not anticipating us having in 2022 at the state and the local level in Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, all over from the Midwest here. So we have a great opportunity to, again, tell the story of, the Biden-Harris administration accomplishments that we can see right around us here in Chicago, across Illinois, across the region, and across the country, of how, democratic policies in action are impacting people's lives every day, making them better. And on top of that, we have just an unbelievable infrastructure, which we'll highlight on our next slide here. Many of you have been to many conventions. We've had a lot of really great host cities who have a lot to brag about. But here in Chicago, one of the biggest advantages that we have, one of the reasons that the president and Chair Harrison selected Chicago, is that we have the opportunities of this really huge and vibrant city, but we are also able to execute our convention in this really kind of compact and easily navigable way. We want to make sure that you all who are here to do the important work of our party are able to focus on that work and not be worried and stressed about how you're going to, get about the city and get about your day. And so we're going to be hosting our daytime party activities at McCormick, which we'll touch on in a second, in McCormick Place. It's a beautiful facility right on Lake Michigan, just south of the Loop. The United Center is just west of of downtown, where we'll host our evening proceedings. And then all of our convention hotels are located within a 5-mile radius of both of those facilities. So that's just a huge, improvement over some of our previous situations. Folks will not have to be, traipsing all over Creation to get to their hotels at night. And we're going to have all of our delegations staying at just 8 Union properties right downtown in the heart of Chicago. We can go ahead and advance to the next slide here. So we know a lot of the important work that you'll be doing will be taking place within the context and construct of our official DNC caucuses and councils. The schedule was just shared with members very recently, but we are going to have 4 packed days that the Secretary's office has worked along with our colleagues here at the DNC to put together and make sure that everyone has the opportunity for that in-person collaboration and community building that we were obviously robbed of 4 years ago, and are really excited to bring back here in Chicago. We can go ahead and move on. One thing we want to flag for you all, as I know we're talking about our official convention business, but we do want to plug, since many of you are leaders of or affiliated with other organizations and folks who are planning activities here in Chicago, our host committee has put together some incredible resources that you'll find on their website. We have a directory of over 2,000 local venues and businesses, over 70% of which identify as diverse-owned businesses, something that under Chair Harrison and Chair Moore's leadership, we've been hyper-focused on ensuring that the economic impact of our activity here is felt as broadly and equitably as possible across Chicago. And so we have lots of really amazing, small, local, minority-owned, women, LGBTQ plus, veteran-owned businesses that are really eager to do business with us. So please, as you're going about your business here in Chicago, check that out and make sure that we are patronizing all those folks who are really eager to partner with us. We've also really proud to have hit our 12,000 volunteer sign-up goal already, but of course always eager for more folks who want to lend a hand and help. So please do send any volunteers and prospective volunteers that who are interested to the website there to fill out that form. And click through. Just want to touch on a couple other quick points. Obviously, we know safety and security top of mind given recent events, protest activity, et cetera. And so just wanted to touch on this, reassure everyone that the United States Secret Service has been here. This is not a typical event. They have been here as long as we have, over a year. The convention, designated as a national special security event. And so we've been working very, very closely daily with our partners, our counterparts at the Secret Service, the Chicago Police Department, and all of the various levels of local, state, and federal law enforcement. And we have, great confidence in their plans, keeping our guests, our delegates, everyone visiting here, as well as the residents of Chicago safe, is obviously everyone's top priority. And we remain in very close touch, adjusting as necessary. But these folks have been here for a very long time, put a significant amount of time and resources into this planning. The Chicago Police Department has offered 400 plus hours of additional training, both to their frontline officers as well as commanders who will be decision makers on the ground. This is, we obviously are Democrats. We are the big tent party. We embrace that the fact that folks have a variety of opinions on all sorts of issues, and we know that there's going to be folks who come here to exercise their First Amendment rights, and we are very, we're eager to respect and protect and facilitate their ability to do that, while also ensuring a safe and successful convention again for all of our attendees and for the people of Chicago who are just trying to live their lives here. If anyone has any questions about that, we can be sure to get in touch with us after, and we're happy to talk about it in more detail. And then some final two things I want to mention as you all are, planning your time to come here, be with us in person. Accessibility, something that obviously we always try to prioritize as Democrats. This is something Chair Harrison has really centered in our process and our planning from day one. And so this is, Robin Jones is our accessibility advisor. She's a, full-time employee or consultant to both the convention committee as well as our local host committee, working with all of our venues, all of our hotels, all of the, systems and processes that will be, logistical in nature, but also conducting a lot of outreach. She works closely with our DNC Disability Caucus and has also met one-on-one with many, if not most, of our state delegations to understand, their needs and what they're looking to be able to do so that we can make sure that we are, living up to our commitments to be the most inclusive that we possibly can be as we execute this event. And then similar vein of living our values, we have a full-time sustainability advisory group that is helping us to think through all of, again, our kind of processes, our venues, and identifying ways that we can ensure through action and through the communication and education of our delegates and our attendees that we can be executing the most sustainable event that we can, and leaving a legacy for future Democratic National Conventions and hopefully for future large events of all kinds. And I think that is all that I had to say. And I'll just close the way we opened, which is that we're really excited to have you all here. It's going to be a really busy, really exciting and really productive week. And so we look forward to seeing you in 4 short weeks. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to kick it back to Co-Chair Bishop Daughtry.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you, Secretary Ray, Andrew Benz, and Alex Hornbrook for those presentations. I'm excited about being in Chicago. Thank you for the work that you have done to make this a fantastic experience for all of us. And for my Rules Committee members, I hope that you've gained some information so that you can plan and prepare appropriately for your time in Chicago, for the business that we must do, but also to enjoy Chicago, enjoy each other, and get ready for the days ahead as we march to November. So let's talk about the rules. Our rules experts at the DNC are continuing to develop the draft rules for the convention. We want to walk through the key points that you can expect to see in a draft rules when they are circulated to you for your consideration in the coming days. As you know, the 2024 call to convention sets forth temporary rules for the convention, which are recommended to the committee. We expect the draft rules to adhere as closely as possible to the 2024 call, while incorporating a virtual vote component for the presidential nomination, as well as any issues that might require a vote before that nomination. The virtual vote component will use the 2020 process as a baseline. So here's what we can tell you now about how we expect the virtual voting component will work in the draft rules. No voting will take place before August 1st, and then only as directed by the chair and the DNC national chairperson. There will be a 24-hour notice period before the first round of virtual voting begins on the presidential nomination. Clear direction on the deadline for a round of voting so that delegates have all the information they need to cast a ballot for president. Delegates will receive all e-ballots to be returned within the voting window with cybersecurity protections. Many issues will continue to be addressed just as they are in the 2024 call. These issues include whether the votes of automatic delegates, sometimes called superdelegates, will count on the first presidential roll call, and also how to qualify for the virtual nomination process. Under the draft rules, a majority of delegates voting on the nomination will be required to secure the nomination. The draft rules also provide for an in-person component. Our platform will be adopted by in-person vote, a ceremonial roll call confirming the nomination of president and vice presidential candidates, acceptance speeches for our nominees. Moving forward, we expect to convene next week, and we will let you know the precise date and time by early next week. In advance of that meeting, you will receive draft rules for the committee's work, a summary of them, this committee's proposed rules of procedure, and the convention agenda. We will make sure that you have these materials with sufficient time to review them before our next meeting. Let us now take a moment to address any questions that have been submitted during the course of this call.
Well, thank you, Bishop. And for folks, we have a few already submitted. Megan, I see yours in the chat. We'll get to that too. We'll go in order here. First one up, I had Jocelyn Woodards, excuse me, Jocelyn. And after you ask your question, we'll have experts answer. Go ahead, Jocelyn.
Good morning, Governor Walz and Chair Daughtry. I just wanted to ask a question about, is it possible that another candidate can challenge President Biden in a virtual vote?
I'll take that one. Per the convention rules, any challenger would have to have the verified support of hundreds of delegates. The 2024 call, which the details of which you will receive next week, incorporates those rules, and so will the rules that you'll be voting on in terms of how someone gets on the virtual ballot. But where there is a presumptive nominee, such a challenge has never happened over the past half century of competitive primaries. But those rules remain in place today, just as they were yesterday and just as they have been in countless presidential election cycles before that. I hope that answers your question. Governor Walz?
Thank you. Next up, Courtney French. Question?
Good morning. Again, thank you, Governor, and thank you, Bishop, as well for your leadership, as well as the leadership of the DNC. My question is, are super delegates allowed to vote in a virtual roll call?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, I should say. My name is Veronica Martinez. I am the director of the Party Affairs Department, and I'm happy to step in. I think I just heard Governor Walz mention helping answer this question. Under the rules, superdelegates are permitted to vote in the first round of voting. That's because the president is the presumptive nominee. He has an overwhelming majority of the convention's 4,700 delegates. His more than 3,900 pledged delegates alone is sufficient to deliver him an overwhelming majority and the nomination. And so that is the case with superdelegates.
I got it. Oh, thank you. Nathalie, you're next.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for making this so accessible to those of us that are newer to the process. I just want some clarity. So are you saying that the virtual nomination process must be completed by August 7th? I just want clarity there.
Is Governor Walz going to turn it over to me, or should I just start? Great. Sorry about that. A little unmute trouble there. It absolutely should be. The legal risk should be avoided everywhere it can be avoided, especially listening to Dana about today's environment where Republicans and aligned groups like Heritage have really announced their intent to bring every possible lawsuit they can to mess with us and to mess with Democratic voters. And especially hearing about the 70 or so lawsuits last time really brought that point home for me. And if the process weren't to be completed by then, we would really need to prepare to take every step necessary to defend our legal position that the Democratic nominees should and will be on the ballot in Ohio. We anticipate that those would be aggressive legal challenges, and they've already been threatened by Republicans and Heritage Foundation. So it really should be before August 7th, yes.
Simon, next up.
Thank you, Governor Walz, and thank you, Bishop Daughtry. It's great to be here today. Thank you for getting this process started. My question is, could you help us get a sense for what the ballot will actually look like this year?
Sure. We have a good example from 2020 about what ballots should look like for this process. As we heard from Andrew Binns, a very successful balloting process in 2020 that was easy and usable by our delegates and accessible. So you can expect the ballot to look similar to 2020. President Biden as the presumptive and only qualified nominee will be listed. And then under our rules, delegates may also select president, may mark their preference as president. So.
Heather, next up.
Hi there. Good afternoon. Thank you for such an informative session for your leadership. My question is, how is the date going to be selected for the virtual roll call?
Okay, I'll take that one. Thank you, Heather, for the question. So let me just restate that no voting will take place before August 1st, and then only as directed by the chair and the chair of the DNC. So prior to the selection of a roll call date, of a virtual voting date, the Rules Committee must first, that's you, must first adopt the rules of the convention, including the format by which the roll call is conducted. In this case, the Rules Committee must include the rules of the convention that the vote is to be conducted electronically prior to the in-person convention in Chicago. The date can only be set once we have passed the rules. And then at that point, the chair and the chair of the DNC will direct the date and the issue of the ballots.
Veronica, why don't you take the rest of them that are coming in? I know we had Megan in chat and we have a few hands up. So I'm going to turn it to you, Veronica.
Great, absolutely. And so I'm just going to find the chat question here. Just one second. Will the Rules Committee be voting next week on whether a virtual vote will happen? Is this already decided? As we already discussed here, the committee will vote on the rules for the vote next week. We've heard from our experts today, though, that it is really important to ensuring our nominee is on the ballot in all 50 states and DC. So we don't want to disenfranchise voters or risk the legitimacy of this. And so we should be doing the virtual vote by August 7th. And as referenced earlier, we need to be prepared for very aggressive litigation options as well. Sorry, give me 1 second here to correspond with the team about hands. Okay, great. And I'm hearing from the team, we will be answered to ask, and I see one here. How much notice will we have before the next rules meeting? I think we'll hear from Bishop Daughtry in just a moment as we close up here that there will be notice provided for the next meeting. And I believe it's 48 hours notice, but she'll share that with us at the end here, which is a good segue over to Bishop Daughtry because I'm not seeing any more questions in my chat here. And so there is an email address. I think it's what is it, Rules Committee at Dems. It's in your email that you get as a Rules Committee member to send your additional questions. We'll follow up with that after this as well. But Bishop Daughtry, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Veronica. This meeting was convened pursuant to notice on June 19th. We have not completed the business outlined in that notice, and the co-chairs proposed that we recess this meeting to the call of the co-chairs to meet not later than Friday, July 26th at noon. And providing that members will receive notice of the reconvening of this meeting a minimum of 48 hours in advance of reconvening the meeting. Is there an objection to such a recess? Hearing none, this meeting will be in recess, subject to the call of the chairs, with at least 48 hours notice before the next meeting. Please be on notice. Please be on the lookout for the notice of that meeting. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great weekend. God bless you.